She was just a poor waitress, still moving from table to table that evening, serving customers with quiet strength. Then, through the glass door, she noticed a blind boy sitting alone on a bench, completely drenched in the heavy rain. Without hesitation, she ran to him, pulled him from the cold, and brought him inside, giving him something warm to eat. That one simple act of kindness would change her life in ways she never imagined. Days later, the boy's billionaire father showed up, and what he did would turn her world upside down. This is the story of Desmond, a powerful CEO in Lagos. He had wealth, power, and everything money could buy, except love. His wife, Amora, had died during childbirth, leaving behind their only son, Jacob. From that moment, Desmond withdrew from the world. He stopped smiling, stopped feeling. He became a man driven by routine, detached from emotion, pouring everything into his company, Babs plc. But no amount of success could fill the emptiness he carried. 7 years had passed. Jacob had never seen his father's face, or the sky, or even the moon. He was born blind. Desmond gave him everything material: tutors, expensive clothes, the best care money could buy, but never gave him what mattered most: his time, his presence, himself. One cold night, Desmond found himself standing by Jacob's door, just outside, listening as his son whispered to a photo of his late mother. "I know Dad loves me," Jacob said. "I just wish he'd say it. Just once." Desmond stood frozen, unable to enter, his heart heavy with guilt and words unspoken. The next day, Desmond made a quiet promise: to try. Just try. That evening, he picked Jacob up and took him to a restaurant the boy liked. But just as they arrived, Desmond's phone buzzed, a video call from foreign investors. He panicked, led Jacob to a bench outside the restaurant, and told him he'd be back soon. Then he hurried to the car to take the meeting, unaware of the storm rolling in. As Desmond sat in the car, deep in conversation, Jacob waited patiently. Rain began to fall, first gently, then in heavy sheets. People ran for cover. But Jacob had no umbrella, no one beside him. He sat still, soaked and shivering, his small hands gripping his white cane. He whispered into the cold air, "Dad, are you still there?" But no answer came. Inside the restaurant, Sarah, a tired but kind waitress, was just trying to get through her shift. Her back ached, her rent had gone up again, and her mother was sick in the village. She carried her tray with a forced smile, trying not to think too much. But as she passed the glass door, her eyes caught something that made her stop. A boy. Alone. Wet. Not moving. Her heart clenched. She asked a colleague, "Who is that boy outside?" The woman shrugged. "He came with a man, but the man went back to the car." Sarah felt a strange pull. She turned away, but couldn't. She rushed outside into the rain and knelt beside the boy. "Come with me," she said gently, taking his hand. Jacob stood slowly, trusting her voice. She led him inside, sat him down near a dry window, and wiped his face with a napkin. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm fine," he replied, though his clothes were soaked, and his voice was trembling. "Where's the person you came with?" "He went to the car, said he had a meeting." Sarah shook her head. "He left you here in the rain." Jacob nodded. Her chest tightened. "What's your name?" "Jacob." "I'm Sarah," she said, giving him a kind smile. "You're cold. Let me get you something warm." "No, it's okay," Jacob murmured. "He doesn't like to be disturbed." Her heart broke at those words. "Just stay here a minute," she said. "Don't worry, I won't tell him." She walked to the kitchen and took a plate of hot jollof rice, the last serving meant for a customer, but this mattered more. Returning, She placed the food before him.
For me?
Jacob asked, surprised. Yes, she said with a gentle smile. You must be hungry. She fed him slowly, spoon after spoon. He chewed quietly, then smiled for the first time. Thank you, You're very kind. You're safe now, she replied softly. Outside, thunder cracked through the sky. Inside the car, Desmond finally looked up from his laptop, startled by the storm. He turned toward the bench. Jacob was gone. Panic surged through him. Then, through the rain-speckled glass, he saw a scene that made his breath catch. There, inside the restaurant, sat Jacob, dry, warm, smiling. And beside him was a young woman feeding him, wiping his face with care, holding his hand like it mattered. Desmond froze. The laptop lay forgotten in his lap. He watched silently, something shifting inside him. Not anger. Not pride. Something else. Soft. Unfamiliar. The rain continued tapping on the car roof, but Desmond didn't move. Not yet. Something deep within had been stirred by what he saw. That small act, the kindness of a stranger, was beginning to melt the stone around his heart. Desmond's eyes remained fixed on the restaurant door. Through the glass, he could still see Jacob, sitting peacefully while the young woman gently wiped his hands. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply kind. Something in Desmond's chest tightened, not from pain or anger, but something else, something unfamiliar yet deeply real. It had been a long time since he witnessed such pure compassion. He had power, wealth, and influence. People obeyed him, respected him, but this small act of care reached a place inside him he thought was long buried. He took a slow breath, and for the first time in years, Desmond felt the heavy silence of his own absence. He had been distant, consumed by work, locked away from his own son's life. He opened the car door slowly. The rain had stopped. With quiet steps, he crossed the street and entered the restaurant. The warmth inside touched his face. There was Jacob, still smiling, and the woman, Sarah, standing beside him like a guardian. Desmond approached them, heart pounding. Jacob turned his head. Dad. Desmond knelt beside him and gently took his hand, still slightly cold. I'm sorry, he said, voice trembling. Jacob didn't speak. He just listened. I shouldn't have left you in the rain, Desmond continued. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Dad, Jacob whispered. Desmond shook his head. No, it's not. You matter. You're my son, and I should have been there for you. Jacob smiled softly. Thank you, Dad. Desmond turned to Sarah, who looked surprised but calm. Thank you, he said sincerely, for helping him. I only did what anyone should do, she replied gently. He shook his head. No, not everyone would. What's your name? Sarah. He gave a small nod. Thank you, Sarah. I won't forget this. She smiled. Desmond helped Jacob to his feet and held his hand firmly. Ready to go home? He asked. Yes, Dad. And for the first time in a long while, Desmond didn't feel like a stranger in his own life. He felt like a father. And something deeper, hope. That night, in her small, dimly lit room, Sarah sat on her bed. The bulb flickered above her. No food. No money. Rent overdue. She slowly removed her shoes, pulled her knees close, and let silent tears fall. She whispered into the empty room, How will I pay the rent now? Only the ticking wall clock answered. She looked up at the cracked ceiling, searching for strength. Then her thoughts returned to Jacob, how he smiled when she fed him, how he said, You're very kind. She smiled faintly and whispered, "At least I made someone happy." That small memory was all she had, but it gave her peace. She closed her eyes, still burdened by worry, but inside, something felt right. She had chosen kindness. And maybe, just maybe, it would return to her. That same night, across the city, Desmond sat in his large, quiet home. Everything looked perfect, the lighting, the polished floor, the stillness, but his thoughts were far from calm. He couldn't stop thinking about Sarah, about the way she had cared for his son like it meant everything. He picked up his phone and called his driver, the same man who usually took Jacob to the restaurant. "Good evening, sir," the driver answered. "I need a favor," Desmond said. "I'm listening." "There's a waitress at the restaurant near the junction. Her name is Sarah." "Yes, sir. I know the place. I want you to go there tomorrow. Find out more about her, quietly, her background, where she lives. Everything you can learn. But don't tell her anything. It must not come from me." The driver paused. "Understood, sir." "She's special," Desmond said softly. "I need to know more." The call ended. Desmond sat in silence, then stood and walked slowly to Jacob's room. Something in his heart had shifted. And it was only the beginning. 3 days later, Sarah was outside, sweeping the small area in front of her room. The sun was low. Her body was tired, her heart heavier. The landlord had warned her again, rent or eviction. As she put the broom aside, there was a knock. She froze. No one was expected. She walked slowly to the door and opened it. Her eyes widened. Desmond stood there. "You?" she asked, shocked. He smiled gently and held out a brown envelope. "Hello, Sarah. I hope I'm not too late." "No, sir. Please, come in." He stepped inside the small, tidy room. There was just one chair and a table. He sat carefully, placing the envelope down. Sarah remained standing, unsure. "I saw what you did for my son," Desmond said quietly. "I didn't do much," she replied, lowering her gaze. He was cold, hungry. "I just helped." Desmond looked at her steadily. "No. You did something rare. You saw him. You cared. Not many people would." He pushed the envelope toward her. "Please, open it." With trembling hands, she lifted the flap. Inside was not money, but a letter. She read the first line and looked up, stunned. "A job offer." Desmond nodded. "Yes. I want you to work with me as my human relations assistant. The job include a house, clean, quiet. You won't have to worry about rent again." She stared at the paper, then at him, lost for words. "I don't understand," she said. "You have something people can't be trained to have, genuine kindness. You listen. You care. That's exactly what my company needs." Tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but couldn't. "You don't have to decide now," he said. "My driver will come tomorrow. If you're ready, he'll bring you." He turned, walked to the door, and left. Sarah sat motionless, the letter in her hand. Through the small window above her, a light breeze passed. And for the first time in a long time, she had hope. On Monday morning, she stood before the tall glass building, her heart racing. Holding her bag close, she stepped inside. People in suits walked briskly through the hallways, files in hand. Some stared, some whispered, but she kept her head high. Desmond waited near the glass doors. He smiled when he saw her. "You made it," he said. "Yes, sir." "Come, let me show you around." As they walked, eyes followed her. Some pretended not to notice. Some judged her. Desmond saw it. He stopped. "Listen," he said. "You don't have to prove anything. Just be yourself. Greet people. Listen. That's your strength." She nodded and followed him. One morning, Desmond approached her office. "Come with me," he said. "Where to?" "There's a board meeting. I believe your words might help settle things." "Me?" she asked, nervous. Desmond gave a calm nod. "Just speak from your heart, like you did with my son." They entered the boardroom. Her hands were shaking. Some executives glanced at her, confused. One whispered, "Why is she here?" She heard them. Her heart pounded. But then she remembered, "Just speak from your heart." She sat, listened, then stood slowly. "I know I'm new," she began. "I don't have big words like all of you. But I understand people. When workers feel seen and heard, they give their best. If we treat them like they matter, this company will grow." Silence. One man chuckled, dismissive. "That's not how business works." Sarah met his eyes and simply said, "Maybe it should be." Sarah hadn't stopped, and maybe that was why things were finally shifting. "Maybe that's the problem," she said gently. This time, everyone listened. Even the man who had laughed before slowly nodded. "She has a point," he murmured. The room quieted. People stopped speaking over one another. One by one, their eyes turned to Sarah. Desmond watched it all unfold. His expression stayed firm, but something softened in his gaze. He didn't smile often, but today, he almost did. When the meeting ended, people walked out in silence. But Sarah stood a little taller. As she turned to leave, Desmond looked at her and said just one word, "Thank you." After the meeting, Mr. Frank returned to his office. His face appeared calm, but inside, he was far from it. He shut the door, crossed his arms, and stared blankly at the wall. 6 years, he whispered. "I've been here for 6 long years." His thoughts circled around Sarah. She had barely joined the company, and yet Desmond had already given her the role he'd long wanted. "She just walked in and took it," he muttered bitterly. He remembered the way Desmond had looked at her during the meeting, how the board had hung on to her words. It made his chest tighten. "I agreed with what she said, sure," Frank muttered. "But that doesn't make her better than me." He stood and walked over to the window. From there, he saw Sarah at her desk, scribbling in a notebook, smiling, focused. "She won't last," Frank said coldly. "I'll make sure of it." He returned to his chair, opened his laptop, and created a new file. At the top, he typed, "Sarah watch list." He began documenting every little thing, mistakes, questions, time she arrived or left. He planned to track everything. "If she slips," Frank whispered, "I'll be ready." He gave a thin smile. A cold one. The game had begun. A few days later, the office was nearly empty. Everyone had gone home. Sarah sat at her desk, packing up, tired but quietly content. Then the door opened. Mr. Frank walked in with a soft smile. "Good evening, Sarah," he said. She looked up. "Oh, good evening, sir." He walked in casually, glanced around, and said, "Could I use your system for just a moment? I need to check a file. My laptop's acting up." Sarah didn't think twice. "Sure," she said, stepping aside. Frank sat down, inserted a flash drive, and his fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard. Less than a minute later, he stood. "Thank you," he said calmly. "No problem, sir," Sarah replied, going back to her packing. Everything seemed normal. But it wasn't. A few days later, Desmond sat in his office, staring at a file. His face was hard, but his eyes were troubled. He picked up his phone. "Ask Sarah to come to my office," he told his secretary. Minutes later, she entered, clearly worried. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. Desmond nodded and slid a document across the table. "Sarah," he said, "this email was sent out 2 nights ago." She picked it up and read. Her eyes widened. It was a company statement of account. The sender's name was hers. Her heartbeat quickened. "This is my name," she said, confused. "But I didn't send this. I didn't even know about this file." Desmond studied her. "I believe you. But the email came from your system." Sarah's voice trembled. "Why would someone do this to me?" "Maybe someone doesn't want you here," he said gently. She sat down, voice barely above a whisper. "Am I in trouble?" Desmond let out a quiet sigh. "You might be. The board has seen the email. Some are already drawing conclusions." He paused. "But I believe you. And we'll find who did this. Together." Sarah looked up, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you for believing me." Desmond gave a small nod. "I watch people. I know those who fake and those who are real." He tapped the document again. "We start now. Quietly. No one else must know. Be careful who you trust." Sarah nodded, though her heart felt heavy. Someone wanted her gone. Now, she had to fight, to keep her job and clear her name. For several evenings, Desmond and Sarah stayed behind after hours. They combed through files, emails, login records. Sarah was exhausted, but determined. "We'll find the truth," she said. "We can't let them win." Desmond agreed. "It's someone close. Someone who knew how to access your system." They reviewed every detail. Then, one night, Sarah's eyes caught something. "Wait, look at this." Desmond leaned in. On the screen was Mr. Frank's name. The login time matched the email's timestamp. Sarah's eyes widened. "He came to my office that night. Said he needed to use my system. I stepped out to close the window." Desmond stared at the evidence. "He waited for you to step out. Then sent the email." Sarah's hands turned cold. "Why would he do this to me?" "Because he wants you out," Desmond said flatly. Silence hung in the room. Desmond stood. "Now we have proof. We move carefully. He's on the board. But he won't see this coming." Sarah nodded. "I'm ready." "Good," Desmond said, giving her a small smile. "Let's finish this." They returned to the screen, building their case. The boardroom was tense. Every seat was filled. The room heavy with silence. "Let's call her in," one man said. "She must explain before we act." "Her name is on that email," another added. "She has to answer." The door opened. Sarah entered, holding a brown file. She knew what they believed. But she walked in with calm steps and stood before them. Mr. Frank gave her a cold smile, confident. Desmond sat quietly at the side, saying nothing yet. "Miss Sarah," one board member said, "do you understand why you're here?" "Yes," she replied calmly. "You believe I leaked the company's records." "Your name is on the email," another said. "Yes," she answered. "But I didn't send it. And I can prove it." The room went still. She placed the file on the table. "Someone used my system. And I know who." She looked straight at Frank. "It was you," she said. "You came to my office that evening. You asked to use my system for 1 minute. That's when the email was sent. Frank chuckled. That's no proof. Desmond stood. It is. He walked forward. We checked the logs. Your login matched the email time exactly. The board examined the file. One shook his head. You tried to frame her, he said. You wanted her out, another added. Frank stood speechless. No one supported him now. Sarah turned to the board. I love this job. I would never harm the company. But I won't stay silent when wrongly accused. She looked at Desmond and gave a small bow, not just out of respect, but gratitude. Then, she walked out with her head high. Desmond rose and looked at Frank. I trusted you, he said quietly. But you tried to destroy someone innocent. Frank opened his mouth to speak, but Desmond raised a hand. I don't want to hear it. You used her system. You sent that email. You nearly ruined her. The board nodded. As CEO, Desmond said, I can't let this go unpunished. He faced Frank directly. You're fired. Leave the building. Now. Frank stood frozen. No one intervened. A guard appeared and escorted him out. As the door closed behind him, Desmond turned to Sarah and smiled. You stood your ground. I'm proud of you. Tears filled Sarah's eyes, but they were tears of relief. Weeks later, Jacob sat in Desmond's office, smiling softly. Daddy laughs now, he said quietly, noticing the change. Desmond, once distant, now seemed more alive, especially around Sarah. There was warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Sarah and Desmond entered the office, laughing after sealing another major deal. Jacob tilted his head and reached for Desmond's hand. You look happy, Daddy. Desmond smiled. I am, son. I really am. For the first time in years, everything felt right. Sarah had become a part of their lives. The office no longer felt cold. It felt like home. In the evenings, Sarah often visited. She cooked, helped Jacob with his Braille lessons, told stories, sang with him. Desmond watched from the side, seeing how she cared for his son with a genuine heart. One evening, as she helped Jacob find his cup on the table, something shifted in Desmond's heart. This wasn't just about kindness anymore. He was falling for her. Later that night, Desmond sat with Jacob. Can I ask you something? He said. Jacob smiled. Yes, Daddy. Desmond held his small hand. How do you feel when Sarah's here? I feel happy, Jacob said. She makes the house warm. Desmond hesitated, then asked, what if she became your mommy? Jacob sat upright. Really? Can she? I want to ask her, Desmond said. But I wanted to talk to you first. Jacob hugged him tightly. Yes, Daddy. Please let her be my mommy. Tears welled in Desmond's eyes. He hugged his son back. That night, both their hearts felt whole. A few days later, Desmond took Sarah to a beautiful restaurant. The air smelled sweet, the lights were soft, and everything sparkled. They laughed, shared stories, enjoyed the food. Then Desmond looked at her seriously. You've brought peace to my home. Jacob smiles again. And so do I, he said. You're special to me, Sarah. I'd like to marry you. Sarah's eyes widened. She looked down. This is a big decision, she said softly. Please give me time. Desmond nodded. Take all the time you need. Miss the next inspiring story. Thank you so much for watching. See you again very soon.